first, live, local. This is Fox 12 Now.
Hello, everyone. This is Fox 12 Now. I'm Greg Nibbler. Thank you very much for joining us today, wherever you're watching. We appreciate it. Of course, we do encourage everybody to download this Fox 12 Oregon app, some whatever platform you're on. Great way to watch this show and everything else that we do here. But if you are familiar with Fox 12 Now, you know that we get to have a little bit longer form discussions, and we cover a wide range of topics here on the show. We've got some really interesting topics here in this segment. We're going to be talking about Winter Waters, which is a seaweed-centric dining series celebrating Oregon seafood. We're going to talk about all of that, and on top of that, we're going to talk about sea urchin farming. So it's a double whammy for one segment that we're going to be doing right now, and that is because we have two great guests joining us. We have Alanna Kieffer and Aaron Huang, who are both joining us to talk about the amazing work that they do. And Aaron is the sea urchin farmer who we're going to be discussing here in just a minute. But we also have Alanna here, and I'm really excited to talk to you about this and just about the work that you're doing with Winter Waters. And could you give everybody just a basic description of the event and how it got started?
Yes, I would be happy to. Thanks for having me on. Winter Waters started, so I work as a seaweed farmer. I think I'm seaweed's maybe #1 fan, but it started with a couple friends of mine who are also big fans of seaweed and with Oregon's food scene. And it really began just as a way to highlight seaweed as a culinary ingredient and a unique offering on the Oregon coast, but quickly developed into a much larger picture of celebrating all of Oregon's local seafare and getting more local seafood onto restaurant menus and into retail markets, and just making the general public really excited and appreciative of where our seafood is coming from. So, of course, we're including Oregon OoNee in that picture now, that Oregon OoNee is becoming a bigger thing in our markets. But yeah, there's all sorts of dining events, art events, pretty much centered and focused on seaweed and different Oregon seafood products.
I mean, that's really great. So getting the word out there to other people, and you also have incorporated this in with a number of different chefs and restaurants to maybe encourage them to bring that in. And what is one piece of advice that you've given some of the different chefs and restaurateurs and people that you've been working with on how to incorporate Oregon seaweed into their dining experiences?
Oh, that's a good question. I think Oregon chefs are pretty like innovative chefs already, but just telling them to get creative and think outside of the box is something that a lot of them are already doing. But seaweed is really versatile, and I think it's easy for us to, in our society, we really just see it in sushi and used in Asian restaurants, but it's so versatile. It can be eaten fresh or fried, or we have, candy shops putting it in candies and incorporating it into desserts. And so I think that just offering different perspectives and different ways that it can be used has been really fun. But also these chefs are doing this already. Oregon's such a fun place to be in the food scene.
It really is. I mean, and when it comes to the Oregon seaweed, what makes it unique and stand out maybe compared to seaweed from other places? And I'll say right now, I'm not extremely well versed in seaweed. I do like it, but this is why I want to learn, and I'm sure other people do too. What is it about Oregon seaweed that makes it unique?
Yeah, no, I think it's a fair question. We are doing things a little bit different in Oregon than things that are being done in other parts of the country. So a lot of other seaweed farms right now are mostly growing kelps, and they're actually occurring offshore. So in the different waterways, Alaska and Maine are two big examples of this. And seaweed farming has been going on around the world for a very long time. The US is just kind of new to this. But in terms of Oregon's industry, we are actually a land-based farm, which sounds a little bit backwards when growing seaweed. But we're right on the bay, and we do pump water straight into our tanks, but they're tanks that are sitting on a bayside property. And Pacific dulse is growing just free floating in those tanks. That's the type of seaweed that we grow. So it's not necessarily a kelp, it's just a different type of red seaweed. And it doesn't grow on lines, it's not attached to anything. So it is actually a beneficial way to grow Pacific dulse, is more in that tank system than it is going to be out in the waterways. But I think that Pacific dulse is one of the most versatile seaweeds there is. A lot of kelps don't have a long shelf life. They have to be processed in about 24 hours unless they go bad. But Pacific dulse has about a 7 to 10 day shelf life. So you can use it as a fresh ingredient, which I think is really, really beneficial and unique.
And where is it that people can get this right now? So where all is it distributed?
That's another good question. We're distributed through into Portland and down the Oregon coast a bit, and then up into Seattle. We have a couple markets as well. Our website, OregonSeaweed.com, has updates on where you can find it in retail and what restaurants are using it. So definitely check there. But it changes a little bit depending on where you are. And I encourage people, if your local market does not have it, to maybe ask for it. They operate off demand, right? So knowing that people want local new ingredients is really helpful to getting it in the market more.
For somebody at home who wants to try using seaweed maybe in a dish for themselves, maybe not a professional chef, but if you're sitting there at home and you want to try some seaweed in a particular dish or give it a shot, maybe you haven't done it before, is there any one thing that you would recommend people do if they're trying to introduce themselves to it?
Yeah, this is really valuable because I think that one of the things we're trying to do with Winter Waters is show that these are not ingredients that you're only going to find on, Michelin star restaurants. They're things that you can easily incorporate in your home kitchen, seaweed being a big one. So I compare it often in use, not in flavor, to using other leafy greens. So things like kale and spinach. You can use dulse in the same way. You can use it fresh in a salad. So I'll often chop it up and put it into a green salad and use whatever vinaigrette I'm already using on that salad. You don't have to come up with new crazy things that you've never made before. It can be really easy to incorporate. My personal favorite is just sauteing it in a pan. So you can just saute it with other veggies if you want, but it'll get really crispy and it has this more smoky umami flavor. It changes colors when you cook it, which is really fun to do with kids or just for yourself. So it has way different flavors fried from fresh. And I just put it into all the veggie stir fries I'm making, soups, salads. You can dry it and put it in seasonings. That's a really easy way to incorporate it, is just as a dried flake, which we have little jars of. You can just use it as a replacement for salt, which is super simple.
Well, okay, now I definitely want to try more seaweed. You've convinced me, so I need to make sure that I can go get this. Well, I want to find out more about that, and we'll let everybody know too, a little bit more. But Erin, I did want to bring you on as well to talk about this because, talking about celebrating Oregon seafood and everything that it has to offer, and seafair, I guess would be maybe the right word. So when it comes to that, can you tell us about OoNee and what that is?
Yeah, we are a regenerative land-based sea urchin ranch. And the reason we actually started was that the kelp forests in Southern Oregon are actually disappearing pretty quickly. One of the main reasons for that is because a lot of the urchins are actually overgrazing the kelp forests. And so there's this massive population of what I would call sushi grade sea urchins sitting out there in the reef. They happen to have overgrazed, so they're actually a little bit empty right now. And realistically, it's simple. We take them out of the reef where they're actually overgrazing. We're feeding them on land, and we're selling them to choice restaurants across the region.
So you're actually harvesting them in the wild and then bringing them to your ranch?
That is correct.
Interesting. And how do you go about doing that?
Well, you have to get in the water. You have to put on a dive suit. You got some lead weights. You've got a mask. You've got an air hose, and it's basically doing what folks have been doing traditionally for many years, many decades, and actually going back into many cultures, hundreds of years, which is just hand harvesting a lot of these urchins, pulling them out of the water with a very simple implement, putting them into a bag, floating the bag up to the surface of the water, and then collecting that bag on a boat and bringing it back to our facility.
Wow. And how many are you collecting? I guess I don't know how that works. Is it on a daily basis or how that corresponds?
A really good diver can collect about 1,000 pounds a day. We have spent a good amount of time and effort trying to train, especially younger folks that want to get into diving. But a really good diver should be able to do 1,000 pounds a day. Just to give you a sense of what the biomass looks like there out right now in the Southern Reef, we're estimating there's hundreds of millions of pounds of overpopulated urchins just out in that reef alone.
So this is benefiting that natural environment, that ecosystem that's right out there, and on top of that, harvesting something and turning something into a really great product that people all over are wanting to consume.
Yeah, our hope is really that this is a sustainable business model that is fully based off of just market demand. As you may or may not know, a lot of our seafood is actually imported from overseas. And realistically, a lot of the high-end sushi that you get is flown overnight from Japan and other areas of the world. If we can actually harvest a high-end delicacy and actually provide it locally, It keeps more of the jobs here. It keeps more of the money locally. And it also satiates a large amount of the consumers that actually want to eat something domestically produced that's actually organic and actually helps restore the ecosystem in Oregon.
What would you say to someone out there who maybe hasn't tried Oregon sea urchin or wasn't aware that this is something that they can go get?
The funny thing is, I would say try it, and you're either going to love it or you're going to hate it. And that's the best thing to actually happen for something, because the worst thing that can happen is someone actually doesn't feel anything. I love the fact that when people try it, they either love it or hate it, because it's the people that really love it that actually want to keep it going and want to save it and want to keep consuming it.
Now, you said that it could be considered a delicacy, this Oregon sea urchin. So what is it about it that makes it a delicacy to you?
There's actually a few things that are very unique to Oregon and also some other places in the world where this high-end sea urchin exists. Number one, Oregon has a cold upwelling where there's a lot of nutrients that actually come into the water and then feed into the urchins. The second thing is that the water is actually really cold, or quite cold in Oregon. And that cold water actually allows more nutrients to flow into some of the marine species here. When we actually taste tested some of the Oregon OoNee that we've actually brought into markets, it is very comparable to some of the highest end sushi grade sea urchins that they actually sell in Japan, somewhere for over hundreds of dollars for a few hundred grams of that urchin.
Wow. So the economic potential is pretty big here for something like this.
It's massive, and it will also help drive a lot of that restoration effort along the southern coast. And so we're really just facilitators of supply and demand here.
So we need to get that demand up, and also, you know, this is helping out so many different things at the same time. Well, for the same question I was asking earlier, for somebody out there who has not tried sea urchin before, what would you recommend, or where would you recommend they go to try it for the first time?
I would say we have been featured in a lot of restaurants locally in Portland, Seattle. There's been some places in LA. I would say the higher end restaurants, the raw bars, will sometimes have our urchins. I would also welcome people to come out to Newport, where we're based. I know Alanna and a few other folks we're actually going to start giving tours. And so in addition to just trying out the urchins, having access and actually taking a look at what we're doing out on the coast is something that we're actually welcoming a lot of folks to come out and check out for themselves.
We may have to make a trip out to the coast.
Absolutely.
To do that. Yeah, that sounds great. Well, okay, Aaron, thank you for joining us too. And for same question I'm going to ask Alanna. For everybody out there who wants to find out more about your company and what you're doing, what's the best place for them to go?
Yeah, we have still a weekend of events coming up. We'll be down in Port Orford this weekend, actually giving a tour of the Port of Bandon, which has not only Pacific dulse growing in tanks, but also a sea urchin ranch, as well as a bull kelp hatchery that is a relatively new project. So winterwaterspnw.com is where you can find a lot of that. And then if you can't join this weekend, like Aaron mentioned, we'll be doing tours of different aquaculture facilities and foraging and conservation projects through shiftingtidesnorthwest.com is where you can find all those.
Shifting Tides Northwest. And what about your company, Alanna, as far as seaweed?
And then OregonSeaweed.com is where you can find all of the fun seaweed things going on.
Perfect. And Aaron, what's your website?
Our website is oonee.com, OO-NEE. It's really just the phonetic spelling of the Japanese term.
Perfect. Well, both of you, thank you so much for joining today. I mean, it's fascinating what you're doing, and, you know, clearly helping out there on the Oregon coast and cultivating something that's here local and really making it, you know, getting it out to so many different people and educating everybody about this. It's really fun to have a conversation with both of you. Thank you for being here with us on Fox 12 Now.
Of course,
Thank you
thanks
so
for having
much.
us.
And for everybody watching, as I mentioned, this is Fox 12 Now. We are live streaming here from Fox 12 Oregon, as we do every weekday. We start around 1 p.m. We go throughout the afternoon. We have a wide range of different topics and conversations that we cover, and you can check out all of those on the app or at kptv.com under the Fox 12 Now tab or wherever you found us. Thanks for doing so. Feel free to share these segments. And we do have more coming up. We're going to take a break, though, so I will talk to you a little bit later this afternoon. I'm Greg Nibbler. This is Fox 12 Now.